right, guys, here's what we're going to do. I am asking you to factor, and I've given you a quadratic equation. And what we want to do is go ahead and factor this guy. First, it is in standard form because it's equal to 0, and my a, my b, and my c are all integers. Now, I'm going to check for a GCF, and if you check for a GCF, you'll notice that there isn't one. Check to make sure it's not a difference of squares, and it definitely isn't. Difference of squares only has 2 terms. I have 3, so difference of squares doesn't work. Option number 3, perfect square trinomial. Check to see if it's a perfect square trinomial, and right away you should notice that it isn't. 6 is not a perfect square, nor is 20 a perfect square. So it can't be a perfect square trinomial. That leaves us with option number 4, factoring a general trinomial. Now, if you remember to the previous video, there was this gigantic, huge, long process for factoring a general trinomial, which I agree is not a lot of fun. Sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You just got to factor a general trinomial. As far as the methods go, I think that this one's the best. You set up the table, you find all the factors that get you a times c, and then you just figure out which one of those also sums to b. Once you've got that, the numbers that do that for you, your m and your n, you'll substitute them for the bx and group and factor from there. But that's a lot of work. So, let me show you guys a shortcut. I think you're going to like this a lot. I really enjoy it, and it is definitely a little bit faster. We call this the slide and divide method. Slide and divide method, and here's the way it works. The first thing that you need to do, right, is go ahead and take whatever that leading coefficient is, we're going to slide it over and multiply it by c. So here is the slide. What that's going to do is it's going to give me y squared minus 23y. 6 times 20 should be a positive 120. And that's all equal to 0. Let me make a quick note here about this. This is like a kung fu ninja math trick. You're not actually doing real algebra here, and here's why. What I did is, well, one of the rules in algebra is this. Whenever you have an equation, whatever you do to one term, you must do to all of the terms. Or whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to both sides of the equation. Well, here's what I just did. I just divided my first term by 6. I divided my I multiplied my third term by 6. I left this guy alone and left that guy alone. Yeah, I just broke like 2 of the biggest rules in algebra to get this, all right? So, this is a shortcut. It's, like I said, kind of like a kung fu ninja math trick to help us do these problems quicker. But please do not make the mistake of thinking that you're doing real algebra. I have actually broken quite a few rules, which I'll fix in just a minute. But you want to be really careful when doing this because actually we are breaking a few rules in algebra. But let's keep going. Here's what you're now going to do. This leading coefficient is a 1, right? Leading coefficient is a 1. So in order to factor this guy, actually all I need to do is find 2 numbers that multiply to c and sum to b, right? And here's the reason why. Remember up here in this problem, I needed 2 numbers, right, that multiplied to a times c. A times c. But that was because my a wasn't a 1. Check this out. Down here, my a is a 1, and 1 times any number is that number, right? So I get to completely ignore that leading coefficient because it's a 1, and all I need are 2 numbers that multiply to 120 and add to give me a negative 23. So here we go. I think we can come up with 2 numbers that do that. Y times y gets me my y squared. And what two numbers are going to multiply to give me a positive 120 and sum to give me a negative 23? It turns out to be a negative 8 and a minus 15. Negative 8 times a negative 15 will multiply to a positive 120. Negative 8 plus a negative 15, sum to give you a minus 23. But remember, I broke a number of rules in algebra to kind of do this Kung Fu Ninja math trick. Now I gotta fix that. And here's how we do it. This is where the divide part comes in. What you're going to do is take both of these numbers that we just found and divide them by my original A. So 8 divided by 6, 15 divided by 6. Let's go ahead and simplify. Y minus. Well, 8 and 6 is going to reduce to, let's see, I can pull a 2 out of both of those, so it would be 4/3. And this one, 15 and 6, I can pull a 3 out of both of those, and that'll reduce to a negative, 5/2. Now, the last thing you need to do in order to get right, because I asked you for your factors, is just go ahead and take these guys right here, your denominators, and move them up in front of your variable, and you will have your factors. 3y minus 4 and 2y minus 5 is equal to 0. And I have my two factors. So again, here's the way this works. When I look at this problem, I originally would have had no choice but to go with doing this guy right here, where I set up my table. Once I've set up my table, I find the two numbers, that get what I need, replace my bx with those two numbers, and group and factor. And now what we've just seen is this slide and divide method, which is definitely faster, I think a lot easier, where we can get our factors without having to do any of that, without having to set up that table, without having to do the substitution, without having to do the group and factor. I get my two factors. So here's what we'll do. We'll head over to the next page of the notes. We'll try a couple more of these just to make sure that you've got it down. So I'll meet you over there.